Okay, on to our last section of Chapter 2, Section 8. And here we're dealing with inequalities. But I'll do a little review before we start on these examples. Now in high school, when we used to graph numbers on the number line, we used to use a hollow over, let's say, a 2 if the 2 was not included in the set. And we would use a solid dot if the number 2 was included. So if it was less than, the way we're going to do it now, we're going to use a parenthesis that faces to the left. If it's greater than, only greater than, we're going to use a parenthesis facing to the right. And if it's less than or equal to, we're going to use a bracket facing to the left. And if it's greater than or equal to, we're going to use a bracket facing toward the right. So we're going to see some of these right away. So we could put them here on the number line. They already have a number line for us. So my idea is just put the number you're interested in, a -7, right there in the center. And it says x is greater than or equal to. So we're going to use a bracket at 7 to indicate it's greater than and equal to, that a -7 is included. Now here we have x is less than 2. So again, there's our 2. And less than 2 is going to be a parenthesis because the 2 is not included. And it'll face toward the left. Now this is a compound one where the numbers we're interested in are a 4 and an 8. And here x is in the middle, but it's only greater than, so 4 is not included. But here it's less than or equal to, so we use a bracket. Now, this is the actual graph of these. This is what they've asked us to use, but we're also going to be using interval notation, which really comes almost directly from the graph. So to write this expression over here, or this inequality, in interval notation, we would just put a bracket, -7. Now where is this going? This is going to positive infinity. And positive infinity always ends with a parenthesis, or starts with a parenthesis. And here it's coming from -infinity and going up to a 2. And again, we use the parenthesis right from the graph, indicating that 2 is not part of the set. And for this one, we're going to use a parenthesis at 4, a comma, and then an 8, and a bracket. So these are the interval notations, these are the graphs, and these are the inequalities. We're now going on to solve inequalities, and we'll do a few things to them as well. Now, in most cases, when we solve inequalities, they are done exactly the same way as when we solved equations. If there are fractions, we get rid of the fractions. If there are grouping symbols, we get rid of the grouping symbols. We then transpose to get we combine like terms, then transpose. And we want to try to keep the variable positive. And there's a reason for that I'll get to very shortly. But let's do number 4 here. I'm going to transpose this negative 8 to the other side, it becomes a positive 8. That gives me 22. Then I'm going to divide both sides by 2. We get x is less than 11. Now here I'm going to try to keep the x's positive. So I'm going to transpose this x. That makes it a 3x. I'm going to transpose this positive 8 to the other side. That makes it negative 8. And a negative 1 makes it a negative 9. I'm going to divide both sides by 3. And I'm reading it from right to left now. X is less than negative 3. Now in number 6, it's a little different here because notice it's a negative 3x is less than or equal to 15. Now in order to get a positive x there, I have to divide by this negative 3, both sides. Now something very, very, very important. Whenever you have to divide by or multiply by a negative, that is the variable, is being multiplied or divided by a negative. In order to keep that statement true, you must reverse the direction of the inequality sign. So here it's less than or equal. It now becomes greater or equal to negative 5. That's the only thing we do different when we are working with inequalities. If we have to divide or multiply the variable by a negative, in order to keep the statement true, you must reverse the direction of the inequality sign. Now, in number 7, I'm going to try to keep it positive. That way I don't have to worry about reversing it. So I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. Then I'm going to add 6 to both sides. And I get then 16 is greater than 2x. I divide both sides by 2. I get x is less than 8. Okay, I'm not going to do all of these because it would just take too long. But here are the answers. But now in number 12, we have some fractions. So I'm going to multiply every term by the lowest common denominator, 6. So here 6 goes to x, nothing, so 6x. Now 3 goes into 6 twice, so I get a 2 there. Nothing to cancel out here, so I get a negative 12x. Now here 2 goes into 6 3 times, so that gives me a 3x. And then there the 6 cancels out and I end up with a 5. All right, I collect like terms. I want to keep my x's positive, so I'm going to transpose the negative 6x to this side. It becomes a 9x. I transpose the positive 5 to this side. It becomes a negative 5. Plus 2 is a negative 3. I divide both sides by 9, and I get x is less than or equal to a negative 1/3. Now, it's okay to write it this way. Remember, the point is toward the x. The point is toward the x. Now here you would distribute and then collect like terms. Here I would probably multiply everything by 10 to get rid of most of my decimals. I'd still have some inside the parenthesis, but that's okay. Same thing here. I'd multiply that by a 10, multiply that by a 10, and I'll do number 16 for you. Wow, this number 16, I had to start it 3 times. First I tried a 6, then a 12, 24, then 36. You'll see why in a minute. Well, 2 goes into 36 18 times. And then there's this. 3 goes into 36 12 times. So I had to pick a number big enough so I can get rid of these fractions too. So now I distribute. I get 18x. A negative 1/3 of 18 is a negative 6. And then 4 goes into 12 3 times. 3 times 3x is 9x. 6 goes into 12 twice. 2 times a negative 1 is negative 2. So, again, I want to get rid of all the fractions. This was one of the most challenging I've come across for a while. So I group like terms, I did, and then I'm going to transpose. So on this side, it becomes a negative 9x, which gives me a 9x. This goes to this side as a positive 6. Minus 2 gives me a 4, and there's my answer. Okay, in number 17, I made a picture. There's one side is 18. I'm sorry, well, that's the answer, but it's S. We didn't know. Then the other side is 3 times as long as this. And then the third side is 14. So I added up the 1s and the 3s to get 4s plus 14. Has to be less than or equal to 86. I solve that, and I get that s is less than or equal to 18. Then I go 3 times s is 54. Okay, this is kind of a two-part. A person who weighs this much uses this many calories per minute when they walk to work. If she walks 40 minutes each day, how many days will it take her to work off at least 500 calories? Well, it's this per minute times 40 minutes times the number of days. So when I multiplied this, I got this number of days, divided this by both sides, and I get 2 days and almost a third of another day. Okay, on to our last two of this section. Here they're going to have an anniversary dinner. They can spend up to $1,000. And if the club charges $150 cleanup and a fee of $15 per person, what would be the greatest number of people they could invite and stay within their budget? Well, it's $15 per person, that's what this is, plus the cleanup fee. So we subtract the cleanup fee from both sides, divide both sides by 15, and it's 56 point something, so the most they could have and stay under budget is 56. Now, here I noticed in the answer key, they said a different number, so that's another little error I spotted. All right, our last item is Sandra's going to just taking tests, and she has these 4 averages. Now, she'd like to make an A, which is above 90. So what does she have to make on that last score? Well, the way we do averages is we list the scores, and we don't know that n, that's the unknown score, and then we divide it by the number of tests, which is 5. Now, to clear it, we go 5 times this side, the 5s cancel out, 5 times this side, and it gives me 450. I add these up, and it gives me 356. I now subtract 356 from both sides, and I get n is greater or equal to 94 for her to keep that A average. Okay, with this, you should be ready for your test. Good luck. Hopefully, this is helpful. We'll start chapter 3.